Uh-oh. Okay, we'll start with this. The commentating team for the Taylor vs. Serrano trilogy has been officially announced. Calling the action will be former champion Laila Ali, former undisputed two-weight champion Senicia Estrada, Sean Grande of the Ringside Blow-by-Blow, Ariel Helwani of the Ariel Helwani Show, announcer Cody Big Mo Momarts, media personalities Sibley Scholes and Kate Scott, former two-weight unified champion Andre Vord, and analyst Sean Wheelock. What you can expect to be an exciting night of action and a far cry from the overhyped, overpriced Times Square show. This will be the exact opposite of that. A look at the numbers. Upon their initial meeting in April of 2022, Katie Taylor landed 147 punches to Amanda Serrano's 173. But Katie landed more power punches than Amanda at 47% to Amanda's 35, thereby explaining the perception among some that Amanda should have got the decision in their initial meeting because she landed more punches than Katie did, though because Katie landed more power punches at a higher percentile, that also reconciles how she got the nod, how she got the decision. Now, the decision in the second fight is much, much harder to reconcile, as Katie Taylor landed 217 punches to Amanda Serrano's 324. But not only that, Katie Taylor only landed 49% of her power punches to Amanda Serrano's 58. Amanda outlanded her in punches landed overall and in power punches landed. This reconciles my feeling, my take on both fights, that Katie Taylor did do enough to win the first one, but by all rights, Amanda should have won the second. And I don't know. I don't know why she didn't. I don't know why the judges didn't score it in her favor. I remember right before the judges' scorecards were read, I was confident that she did enough and she should get the decision. And so because Katie Taylor is 2-0 so far, there is some wondering why even do a third fight. That would be the why, that would be the reason, because both fights were very tight fights, and there are a lot of people who felt Amanda should have won the second one. So what can we expect to see in a third? What can Amanda do differently this time out? And what is supposed to be different this time out? Well, this time out, we're approximately 2 to 3 years out from their initial meeting in April of 2022. Katie Taylor is 2 to 3 years older than she was when they initially met. That's one thing that's different. And from the time that she fought Amanda Serrano till now, she's been in wars. Nothing but wars. The Amanda Serrano fight, the first one, was a war, as were the two Chantel Cameron fights that followed that. Those were wars. Tack on their second meeting, Katie Taylor's second meeting with Amanda Serrano, that was a war as well. So what could be different in this trilogy is that Katie might be a bit more worn down. She's a few years older, few more battle scars, more miles on the odometer. As far as Amanda and what Amanda can try to do differently, maybe go to the body. Take away Katie Taylor's legs, because oftentimes that's what has availed Katie Taylor in tight, critical situations. Her mobility, moving around and using the ring, that becomes a lot harder to do after you've absorbed a few hard shots to the body. If you want to take away a moving target's legs, you go to the body. So perhaps in their two initial meetings, Amanda Serrano was headhunting and spending a little bit too much time on the head punches, maybe this time she makes a conscious effort to go to Katie's body. Katie has shown a fantastic chin over the years. Great punch resistance in the Delphine Persoon fights, the Chantel Cameron fights, the Leonardo 2 fight, and of course, the Amanda Serrano fights. She can take the head punches, but what about the body? I've seldom ever seen anybody go to Katie Taylor's body. Body, baby! Now, it's a bit harder to say what Katie Taylor needs to do differently because whatever she's been doing, it won her the first 2 fights. So there's a if it ain't broke, don't fix it kind of situation there. Does she need to do anything differently? It's not just the main event I'm excited about. It's really the card in its entirety. I'm not trying to oversell it or convince you of anything. I'm genuinely excited for every single fight on this show. Don't focus on the novelty of it being an all-female show with all-female fighters. Think of it as being all good fights. Every single one. Every single fight on this card has the potential to be a shootout, to be a barn burner. To that effect, it doesn't matter if it's 2 guys fighting 2 girls or 2 squirrels. So long as it's all action, that's what matters. And this card, in its entirety from top to bottom, is all action shootouts, all action fights. I'm looking forward to it a little over 2 weeks from now, Friday, July 11th, and we'll talk more about it as the fight date approaches.
I was not very impressed with the last fight of Crawford, the fight, I don't remember the name of his opponent. For me, I was not...
Madrimov.
I was not very impressed. Canelo fight too, I was not very impressed. But Skull, yeah. But we're going to see, for me, my favorite is Canelo because I think Canelo is more bigger. And we're going to see if Crawford makes the same strategy that Schools, but a little bit more. He put more punch. If he put more punch, we're gonna see. But for me, I think Canelo is more bigger, and the way we make the difference.
That is the official word from top-rated contender via the WBC, Christian Mbilli. He's not impressed with either fighter. He's not impressed with what he saw from Crawford in his last fight, but he's really not impressed with Canelo either. Being a Canelo Alvarez fan and just being honest, I wasn't impressed with how he looked against William Skull. While I think William gave away the fight, Canelo could have done more to put on a show and make it entertaining. Christian Mabilli. Christian will be defending his WBC interim title this Friday against Poland's own Maciej Sulecki. You may be familiar with that name. That's the same Sulecki that boxed Demetrius Andrade and Danny Jacobs in the middleweight division. That's the same Maciej Sulecki that young Diego Pacheco knocked out in August of last year. He is now boxing Christian Mabilli, and I expect Christian to plow through him the way he plows through everybody else. He's a pressure guy, and you know what pressure guys are all about. You know how they fight. I expect Christian to overwhelm Sulecki and maintain his position as WBC interim champion this weekend, because if he does, he's in direct line for the winner of Canelo versus Crawford. The question is, will he actually get the winner of that fight? I suppose that depends on who wins, because if Crawford wins, I would sooner expect Crawford to fight Canelo Alvarez for a second time or retire before he fights Christian Mbilli. I don't expect to see that happen. In my previous video, we talked about the uniqueness of Canelo versus Crawford. That while Canelo Alvarez is fully acclimated to the super middleweight division, he himself does not have a super middleweight's frame, which creates a unique opportunity for Terence Crawford. Canelo's been up there for 5 going on 6 years. He's fully acclimated to the weight. There's no question that he can handle himself at 168 pounds, and even if he doesn't have a super middleweight's frame, he does have super middleweight power. Where Terence may find the situation manageable is that Canelo's not a big guy. Where Christian Mabilli, he is. Yeah, Christian Mabilli is a bigger guy than Terence Crawford. He's a bigger guy than Canelo Alvarez. He's a bona fide super middleweight. He's not a little guy that moved up like Terence Crawford, like Canelo Alvarez. He's a super middleweight. He's never been anywhere else. And the idea that Terence Crawford at 37 going on 38 years old, should he beat Canelo Alvarez, will henceforth campaign as a super middle against other super middles? No, I don't expect that to happen at all. No. So if Terence wins the fight, I don't expect him to face Christian. In that situation, Christian may end up boxing for a vacant WBC title because Terence might retire, and if he does, the title will go vacant, at which point Christian can fight for it. That's if Terence wins. If Canelo wins... The problem there is they're lining up Canelo Alvarez for either a Chris Eubank Jr. fight next year or a Hamza Shiraz fight next year, provided that Hamza beats Edgar Berlanga. But those guys aren't due a title shot. Those guys aren't interim anythings. Christian Mabilli is. Christian Mabilli would be the one that is owed a title shot, and if you ask me, I would rather see Canelo versus Mabilli than Canelo versus Eubank or Canelo versus Shiraz. I would rather see Canelo versus Mabilli, not just because Mabilli is owed the shot, but stylistically it's a great fight. Pressure fighter versus boxer puncher. That stylistic matchup usually yields a fan-friendly aesthetic. Canelo's a boxer puncher? Canelo sort of toggles between two separate base styles. Boxer puncher at some other weights, pressure fighter at super middle. The reason he behaves a lot like a pressure fighter at super middle is because of his compact frame. He's a little guy at 168. He doesn't have a choice but to come forward on these guys since he doesn't have the height or the length to box them from the outside. He barrels forward, applying pressure on the inside. Though he's not a true pressure fighter. Why not? True pressure fighter is a volume puncher. A true pressure fighter has a much higher work rate than what we've been seeing from Canelo Alvarez over the years. He still does a lot of punch picking. He's still very selective with his output. Too much, too selective to be a true pressure fighter. He knows how to apply pressure, but he's not an according to Hoyle pressure fighter. He can mimic one. No, Christian Mabilli would be the according to Hoyle pressure fighter in that situation, at which point Canelo Alvarez can pick him off with his patented counter-punching. He'd relish the opportunity to put it on display because Christian is not the kind of fighter that you have to chase. He ain't William Skull. He's the polar opposite of a fighter like that. And so I think Canelo versus Mabilli makes for a better and more entertaining fight than Canelo versus Eubank or Canelo versus Shiraz. Mabilli deserves it more. Turkey's already expressed an interest in using Christian for one of his Riyadh season shows later on this year. Why not use him next year for Canelo? Just a thought. In men's heavyweight news, a shocking revelation ahead of Wilder's ring return this weekend. Wilder has parted ways with his good friend Malik Scotch. But is it the right move? Deontay Wilder has parted ways with Malik Scott. As we look at why the latter was a bad fit, the news comes shortly before Wilder's fight against journeyman Tyrell Herndon this upcoming Friday. During his time with Scott, Wilder only secured one victory in 4 fights. That was a first-round knockout of Robert Helenius back in 2022, 3 years ago. That was followed by defeats against Joseph Parker and Zhilei Zhang. Despite repeated calls for Wilder to leave Scott, the Bronze Bomber continued to stand by him up until now. The pair have now confirmed they've parted ways. So what is the reason that Wilder lost those fights? Because Malik was training him? We're brothers, and we'll always be brothers. We talk all the time, and there's nothing bad between us. Sometimes things change, and this was one of those times, Wilder said. I wanted the best for Deontay. He did things to electrify the sport, and some things need to be reinvigorated. He called me and he let me know we're doing things different in the corner for this fight. We thanked each other for all we did for each other. He's in good hands, and I know he's in good hands, said Scotch. The consensus was that Scott tried to turn Wilder into a boxer. Wilder's success was based on his devastating one-punch knockout power from his right hand. While he was labeled as a slugger, he used his athleticism to become a knockout artist. Under Scott, there was an attempt to transform Wilder into a technical, defensively sound boxer who fought off the back foot. This went against Wilder's strengths, stripping him of his identity. It's not exactly accurate. While it is true that Malik tried to patch up some holes that were already there for Deontay Wilder, that he did try to make him more of a boxer, he's not the one who stripped Deontay of his identity. That was Tyson Fury. All Malik tried to do was pick up the pieces. There was also less reliance on his jab and the right hand in the fights against Joseph Parker and Zhilei Zhang. Wilder was seen moving backwards, not throwing his jab. He was also rarely letting his right hand go. There was also the apparent loss of the killer instinct. When Wilder had opponents hurt, he seemed less capable of finishing them. He had hurt Zhang in the round, where he was ultimately knocked out, something which was unheard of during his peak. Scott also came up short compared to Wilder's previous trainer, Mark Breland. The latter was fired after the second Tyson Fury fight for throwing in the towel. He developed Wilder into a powerful, aggressive fighter, where he was at his best. Scott was seen as being too friendly with Wilder, and given Wilder had knocked him out during their initial meeting, it was hard to see the Bronze Bomber getting the respect of Malik Scott. Wilder's father, Gary Wilder, criticized the relationship, saying that Scott was too buddy-buddy.
To stop you right here, I don't think it would have mattered who Wilder had in the corner, in the Parker fight or the Zhang fight, because it wasn't about the corner, it was about Wilder. Wilder himself has gone on to say that he lost his confidence. He lost his mojo.
And Malik Scott, or nobody else, was going to be able to get it back for him. Don't forget that when he first loses to Tyson Fury, effectively losing his mojo, Malik wasn't the one in the corner. It was Mark Breland.
So you lost with Mark in the corner. You lost with Malik in the corner.
I just get the sense that whoever wrote this article is under the impression that if not for that, Wilder would have been invincible. Wilder would have never lost.
Bullshit.
Now, trying to turn Wilder into a boxer, which Malik Scott tried to do, that was an exercise in futility. You're dealing with a fighter who's in his mid-30s and is over 40 fights into his pro career, settled into a lot of bad habits and over-reliance on the big right hand.
You know, it only worked because he was fighting stiffs for something like 7 years.
Malik Scott was only trying to add wrinkles to Wilder's game because the big right hand didn't work. It wasn't enough to keep Tyson Fury down in the first fight, and in the second fight, he couldn't land it.
He got brutalized.
Now, he did land it in the third fight, though once again, it wasn't enough to keep Fury down or keep Fury off of him. So let's not blame Malik Scott for Deontay Wilder's failures. This assignment was more than Malik Scott could hope to take on, adding wrinkles to Wilder's game so that he's not just a one-trick pony, a one-handed puncher.
He'd been relying on that one right hand for far too long.
Malik knew that, and he tried to round out Wilder as a fighter, but by then, it was too late. Now, Wilder often talks about snakes and leeches being in his circle and how he's removed them. I don't think Malik was one of those snakes. I think that Malik's intentions were good, but this assignment was just beyond him.
Moreover, what trainer do you think would have helped Wilder in that situation? Could anyone have succeeded where Malik failed? With Wilder.
In his mid-30s, over 40 fights into his pro career,
Confidence shattered.
it's not all on Malik.